for June 4th. General business, we're going to start out. Stacy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have an opportunity for citizens to speak. Do we have anyone tonight that would like to address the committee? Okay. Seeing none, our next item under general business, bright lights. We have an update on the dual language seal of biliteracy. Our students are here tonight, and we'll start it off with Dee Garcia giving us an introduction. Thank you, Dee.
Hello, everybody. Is this working okay? Can you hear all right? Okay. It's nice to be back again. We come every year. We've come every year since 2017 to celebrate the graduation of our multilingual scholars. The three students that are here before you have earned the prestigious Wisconsin Seal of Biliteracy Award. They are 3 of 87 students this year, and in total in the past 3 years we have graduated over 150 students with this award. So I would like to thank this board for always being very supportive of our multilingual programming, including our dual language program and our advanced placement options for our linguistically talented scholars. Okay.
Hello, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Diego Benitez. I'm the one in the middle there. I went to Banting, then I went to Harding Middle School, and now I'm going to be graduating from South High School. I plan to go to Carroll College next year and study pre-law and possibly political science.
All right, good evening, board. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Well, I'm Renan Rodriguez. I started my education here in Waukesha at Higher Elementary, and from there I went to Horning, and both were great schools. I loved it there, and currently I am at South and am graduating in a couple days actually, so that's exciting. I plan on attending UW-Madison, and although undecided, I kind of have an idea of where I want to go, and one of those options is possibly education, and maybe one day serve amongst you guys.
Good afternoon. My name is Frida Albiter, and I am a Waukesha South graduate, graduating from the Health Academy there. I went to White Rock Elementary School, and then I went to STEM Saratoga, and I plan to go to UW-Madison next year and major in biomedical engineering.
First, we should ask ourselves, what is the Seal of Biliteracy? The seal is an honors award for graduating seniors who have demonstrated global competency and the ability to master English and other languages, recognize their own and others' perspectives, communicate ideas in English and another language, and take action. Our Waukesha community is home to students who speak 48 additional languages to English.
All right, so to touch a little bit more on that, some of the benefits of the Seal of Biliteracy is that it allows you to become a bilingual, maybe even trilingual like myself. I did Spanish, French, and English. And it allows you to become a more globally competent person because, believe it or not, there's a whole world beyond the United States, and it's important, to be interconnected with it. And it will bring you a mountain of opportunities that I cannot express enough is important if you want to go far. And the way you actually receive it, it'll be on your diploma. On the piece of paper, there's a little seal, the Seal of Biliteracy, and it just signifies that you won the award and earned it through your hard work.
So the Seal of Biliteracy is honored in and transferable in 23 states in the United States. Many of these states have had a Seal of Biliteracy for a number of years now and graduated tens of thousands of students whose vital signs are skills we recognize tonight.
So as you're enjoying the visual image of these scholars with their multiple achievement awards, including their participation in Avid and honor societies, and with their seal, would you like to show them the Seal of Biliteracy Award that you got? This is the first ever that we've had a Waukesha emblem that was created by the talented Mary Jo King. When we first did the Seal of Biliteracy, we had 47 students graduate. The bulk of those students were students from South High School. This year we had 89 students graduate. It included West, North, and South. And while we have a lot to grow on at North and West High Schools, we are in a thriving environment at South that supports our multilingual and linguistically talented students.
The Global Education Achievement Certificate, or GIAC for short, is another award that recognizes students for their participation in their coursework, service learning, and have taken 4 years in global language. The GIAC demonstrates global competency, as students that have the award have proven that they can investigate the world, communicate ideas to a diverse audience, develop their own perspective while acknowledging and respecting the perspective of others, and take actions to meet a need.
All right, so one of the requirements to earn both the SEAL and the GIAC is 20 hours of community service. And with our 89 recipients of the award, that came out to be, I think, 1,720 total community hours. And if you think about that, that's an enormous amount just from this small group of students. So what we exactly did is, for example, I went to the STEM Randall campus and hosted French lessons for the, I think, first graders, third graders, and the fourth graders too. And what we did is we had a presentation, we had different colors, we had basic sayings like what my name is, what's your name. And it wasn't only limited to that, like my peers did one-on-one tutoring, we went to different churches to volunteer, and just a grand variety of things, and some of it will be showcased in the video we have here.
It's supposed to be sound. I'm not sure what's going on with this. We'll just enjoy the visual images.
You could sing, Dee.
I could do that.
Chairman, I think that's out of order.
It crossed my mind. So you can see that students here provided service all across our district for young children, for middle school children. There were several students that, this is Diego. Where was that?
Yeah, that's me. That was at the library.
There's Amalia. She was working at Higher Elementary School, teaching a newcomer student how to read and write in Spanish, and there he is reading. I can't say more than this, that her service with him has saved his life. He is a literate child now because of her dedication. You can see them engaging in activities that are intended to support students creating greater depth in what it means to be a world citizen by studying people who are influential, etc. I think this is Summit View. All of the students engaged in lots of research in order to meet the standard of investigating the world. Many of them did this through their coursework that teachers here in the school district of Waukesha value affording students choice in how they engage in inquiry, and a lot of our students, because of their preparation, have chosen to investigate issues which might affect us locally but also impact our global population. This is at the library, the public library. These are higher students. So just a short video. Sorry we couldn't hear the music. Okay. It says ending slide. They will ask you questions.
Okay,
This
cool.
is your opportunity to do that. Does our committee have questions?
You have questions. I have to be recognized first.
Go ahead,
So,
Mr. Bryan.
so Ernan, you speak French too?
I like to think I do, yeah.
And besides French, for the rest of you, the languages?
Well, I am native to Spanish, so part of my decision to pursue French was that I already knew that language, so why not go ahead and add a third that can be beneficial to me, you know?
Refrito and Diego, Spanish and...
Spanish and English.
So the depth of our language instruction, I mean, from French, do we offer French at at the high school level in your school? So let's take Spanish first, since you all are familiar with Spanish. So what's the difference in Spanish dialects across North and South America? I mean, can you guys easily converse in every country in North and South America in Spanish? Or is there some countries that's harder for you to?
Well, definitely, I feel like there's just like in English, there's some people that speak some dialects that are a little bit harder to understand, definitely. But overall, it's the same language. It's not that difficult to, start picking up on like what words mean something. Like I remember one time someone said, "¿A dónde está la guagua?" And I was like, "What does that mean?" I speak Spanish. I don't know what this guy's saying, but he meant, "Where's the truck?" So definitely, there's different words that represent the same thing, just like in English. But it's not that difficult to understand, and that's another thing that the programs that our school offer help us with, because we read, stories from Argentina, stories from Spain. We start picking up those words, and even like, I don't know if you've ever read like Shakespeare. You start picking up after a while, even though it's torture, but no, it really helps because you start understanding like the roots of the language and how it's evolved, and you definitely see how it evolves in certain regions as well. Just like Argentina, as an example again, has a rich culture of natives and Italians, and obviously they have a certain accent and different words and a different culture. But just by reading our literature, their literature and things like that, we start understanding them. Just like in English, where you just read a book and you start immersing yourself into a different culture.
So just to follow up on that, I've been to Chile, and I can guarantee you won't understand a word of Spanish in Chile because they crowd their words together so much. It's very hard,
probably.
Right? And then French, familiarity with the difference between Quebec French and French French?
Oh yeah, we've even experienced this firsthand in class. We had a lesson where we listened to this Quebec mayor talk on an issue about water because it was relevant to Waukesha. And after the first listen, just about everybody in the class was confused. But then the teacher explained to us that there's these different dialects, and it's important that we realize that. So we gave it another listen, and we found that just like your example about Chile, that a lot of the words are put together, so it's harder to understand. Essentially, the same thing was happening there. And so we got a better idea on it, and we were able to do a sheet and everything on, what he was talking about. And overall, we comprehended a lot better than our first exposure to it.
Does one of you want to address maybe the ethnic and cultural backgrounds of your teachers over time?
I was in elementary.
Yeah. Like where have your teachers been from?
Well, like I said previously, I came from White Rock Elementary School. I was actually the last fifth grade class I graduated before they closed the school down. Most of my teachers came from Hispanic backgrounds, but I did have teachers that were not not Hispanic, but they would teach dual or they would teach ESL. And they had to get involved in the culture, and I could see that their Spanish got better as our English got better, just because they were involved with kids with that much difference throughout the entire year. And then moving on to when I was in STEM, I had one teacher, which was a Spanish teacher there that was Hispanic. Her Spanish was very good, and so the kids there got a good experience with her. And then now that I'm at Waukesha South, I think I'd like to say we have a good body of different backgrounds in teaching. We have a couple people who are African American, and we have others that are Hispanic and stuff. And my Spanish teacher, she's actually from Spain, so that. There again, where you were saying about the dialects and stuff, that's where I first got exposed to Spain dialect, and how it's different from what I use at home, because my parents are from Mexico, so the dialect is a little bit different. So it took me a while to get adjusted to it, but I think that I'd like to think that I've mastered it by now. So.
Great. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd also like to add on to that. Like, teachers usually also like to show off their culture, just like everyone does. I remember when I was in elementary school, I had a Puerto Rican teacher. She was like an assistant to my first grade teacher, Miss Hole, and she would always, teach us songs from Puerto Rico. I remember she taught us one about coqui, which is a frog, a native frog, and it was like coqui, but it introduced us to, well, not only an animal that we didn't even know existed, but songs that are, foreign to us, but essentially tell the same story. All kids learn different ways, but we essentially get the same outcome. But I think it is very well enriched by different cultural experiences.
Mr. Baumgarten.
You guys all speak English beautifully. Did any of you start your education not speaking English, speaking just Spanish?
Yeah. When I was young, I went to Mexico, and then I came back, just not knowing any English at all. Well, very basic English. I remember one time a kid came up to me and he said, he was like, "Do you want to play or something?" And I was like, "Mom, this kid doesn't know how to speak." That's how foreign English was to me. But I picked up on it really, really fast, just like reading books. Reading books was probably the main way that I started like learning English, because I remember the teacher would make us read like a book a week, like those little tiny books. But I mean, they made a really, really huge impact on me, and I still love reading to this day. I read like a book a month just because I just really like literature and seeing other people's perspectives, different cultures, and just being a more well-rounded human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I come from an only Spanish home. So I came into kindergarten in White Rock. So White Rock had a big body of Hispanic kids, of Hispanic students. So we all kind of took the same path of ESL throughout our 5 or 6 years that we were there. I want to say that my kindergarten, it was all in Spanish, but by the time that I was in about 4th grade, the teaching was all in English. So every year they would incorporate a little bit more English so that we could start getting used to it. And I think I mastered it pretty well, but now I see, for example, my brother who's in a dual program, I had the chance to see kids that must have been 1st or 2nd grade who are fluent in both languages. And I feel like that's really beneficial for all kids, just because that way they get the chance, like Hernan had the chance to study a 3rd language when he was in high school. I feel like that just opens up the doors to all these other kids who maybe don't come from a Spanish-only home or something like that. And that just opens up the doors for them to be able to obtain a 3rd language instead of waiting.
Thank you.
Mr. Cuomo.
Thanks, Greg. First of all, congratulations on all your hard work. Hats off to you guys with all the efforts that you've put forth. And enjoy these last few days. Just be present, take it all in, and just really enjoy being with the people that you've grown up with and the teachers, and celebrating your graduation and all your accomplishments. Just out of curiosity, are any of you planning on taking a foreign language at the college level?
Well, I plan to double major in Spanish, just because I feel like there's not a lot. Well, first of all, I don't think there's a lot of biomedical engineers out there and biomedical engineers that speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. I feel like that would put me at a higher level. So I hope to test out of most Spanish and just take a couple classes so that I can finish with a minor or even a major in Spanish when I'm done with college.
And perhaps it would allow you to maybe work in other countries too, if you wanted to.
In regards to me, it's almost certain that I'm going to be continuing French, because the fact is that if I did well enough on my placement test, which I feel very confident on, I won't need that much more coursework in order to earn a minor in French. So that's the ideal plan for me. That is the plan for me. And so, in short, I do plan on continuing.
Excellent.
I actually plan on picking up Portuguese soon. It's very similar to Spanish, but just like any other country, Portugal and Brazil, I believe, that both speak the language, but they both have very, very rich cultures and backgrounds, and I'm very interested in their music, things like that, and I just want to learn it. I don't know if they offer that at the college level. But I'm definitely going to go check it out. If not, I'm going to figure out how to learn it. But no, I want to be one of those like people that just speak like at least 4 languages, because he's always showing off like his French and things like that. I wish I knew French, but no, yeah, I definitely do need. I will take advantage of Spanish, because obviously I want to study pre-law, but in the long run I want to perhaps get into government, be a politician, something like that. And as a lawyer, it definitely helps being able to communicate with your clients and not having any misunderstandings, and being able to relate to them, obviously, because we come from I can assume that they're going to come from very similar backgrounds or situations, and I'll just easily understand them. And if I do become a politician, again, you want to be able to cater to a very large crowd. And if you can speak English and Spanish, obviously the people that you can reach out to will be much larger. So definitely, language is a very, very useful tool. And I don't know if there's that many people that speak Portuguese in the United States, but why not?
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are continuing on with your foreign and native languages. I need to do both there, actually. Dee, the last time I was on this committee, this was just a vision of yours, these 2 awards. And you have seen it through to realization. And this must just be very rewarding to you to see these students here presenting at the level they're presenting and doing the things that they're doing.
Okay, so thanks for acknowledging that. The first year I felt that when we implemented these awards, a lot of the work was on me to build capacity at the sites and to build community with the schools. For those of you that remember the first students I brought in, I knew those kids in and out. I knew what they wanted to do. I'd read their essays. I knew everything. That's not the case anymore. I have 3 global education advisors, 1 at each of our high schools. So Leslie Abruzzo is at West High School, Senora Myers is at South High School, and Tim Smilenick is at North High School. And what they do is they provide the scaffolds and supports so that the students understand what they're signing up for and they get support along the way. There are very rigorous requirements for meeting the School District of Waukesha Seal of Biliteracy, and they are unique from the state requirements. Our students have to write 2 academic essays, 1 in one language and 1 in the other. They also have to go through a battery of exams, and they have to prove at the advanced level on those exams. Some of them it's the AP exam, others it's the Apple exam, as well as the ACT and other exams that they have in English. In addition to that, they have a service learning component. No other graduate in the state of Wisconsin is required to do all of those things. The state seal is actually a little bit more relaxed than what students here in Waukesha have to do. And I made the requirements for this seal rigorous, and I also made them something that would require our students to work with the community. As you know, we will be in a situation in the future in which we need to look to these youth to become teachers and community leaders, healthcare providers, and I needed them to be in touch with our community so that they feel like they have an opportunity to come here and have a life in this community, rather than, say, having to move to Costa Rica to be a biomedical engineer or move to Milwaukee to become an older person. So it was really important that they had those components in place.
Thank you for all of your effort and your team's efforts. Well done.
Thanks.
Comments? Ms. Roddy?
Yes, a comment. Congratulations. You're dripping with pride around your neck. And I love seeing it. I'm actually fighting tears right now just with the amount of pride that I have in you and your fellow students. On top of your linguistic accomplishments, something I notice of all three of you is how well you carry yourself and the confidence that you have. I love that you look up, you look at our eyes, you look at all of us, and with all of those and the continued support of your families, you will go far. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do. So congrats.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, thank you so much, Dee, for all your leadership, for all the students here tonight, as well as those that couldn't be here. This was certainly a bright lights that was worth seeing tonight, and I wish all of you the best. You guys are going to move mountains. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've done, and congratulations on all your accomplishments. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
One last thing before the students get up and leave is that we have two very important people to thank in the audience, and those are Frida's parents, who have been her greatest teachers. So, para todos los padres. Okay, thank you. Let's go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we're looking at our action items. The first action item, approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee minutes from May 7th.
I will move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Passes, or I was I too, 3-0. Okay. Moving on to approval of the School District of Waukesha Academic Standards. It's an annual event. And we have Dan Kieser and Melissa Yao here tonight to review those academic standards with us and the plan that's in place. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, and good evening. As you mentioned, annually we ask for this committee's approval for our annual Notice of Academic Standards as outlined in 2015 Wisconsin Act 55, where we post on our website, on our annual notices page, the academic standards that we base all of our curriculum foundations on. And just as a refresher, that our Wisconsin academic standards are built off of not only our state standards, but our national standards, so including ACT and College Board for our AP courses and so forth. So with that, we'd like to open it up for any questions members might have.
Mr. Baumgart.
I think I ask this probably every time you do this to us, but just to be sure, are there any significant changes in what you had from last year to this year?
Good question. No, other than annually DPI has been going through a cycle of updates, and so as those updates come, we get notified, but fortunately for us, we plan not only with just state, but the national standards. So for example, our new social studies standards are built off of the national social studies standards, which we are already in compliance with. So
we talked about that last year
updates
already.
have been updates in based off of those standards already.
Good. Other comments or questions?
I'll move for approval of the, this is an approval, yeah, this
Yep,
approval of
actually,
the district academic standards and their posting.
Yes.
Yep.
Second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Como. So we have the motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Stacy passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, guys. Nice job.
We'll be back again to tell you more interesting things.
There we go. Next, we have an overnight field trip request, and I'll turn it over to Jody just to highlight that. And
Just
any questions?
one trip for your consideration this evening, the North High School Choir trip, and that is their tour of New York City. They'll be performing in Lincoln Center. I think if you have specifics, Stacy's always my go-to, but everything looks tidy from my perspective here.
Sounds good. Any comments, questions for Jody or Stacy? Mr. Como?
Just a quick comment. Again, it's been a number of years since I've been on this committee, and these applications have come a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
In that period of time. So I'm glad to see those improvements, Jody. So, Stacy,
Thank you.
whoever needs credit for that, I'm not sure who,
Used to it,
but
yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Just curious, is this a kind of repeat type thing? They've been out there before, right?
Yes, they have. It indicates they've been doing this every couple of years
Every
since
couple of years they
2007.
do that. Okay, thank you.
Else? Mr. O'Brien?
So if a child has, or if a family has financial difficulty, how's that dealt with?
Two things. They do extensive fundraising, which is detailed in the back of the paperwork. And they have significant time to do that this time around because this trip doesn't take place until March of 2020. And secondly, there is a form, pages 3 and 4, where a family can request financial assistance. So the point is to make sure that no children are denied the ability to go based on that.
So not a problem with this, but I mean, it'd be nice to know that everyone is covered, right?
Well, the reason that the board policy states that they need to ask significantly ahead of the time of the trip is to allow them to do that sort of planning and fundraising as well. And students are given the time to fundraise, and they can do as much fundraising as they want to. But there are organized things that the group does together, and they, generally speaking, the money goes into the student activities accounts of their own or the group's account, and then bills are paid out of that.
Any other questions? Comments?
I move
Okay.
for approval of the overnight field trip. as needed.
Okay, sounds good.
Second.
Second? Okay, we have the motion second for approval of the overnight field trip as presented. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stacy passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we're moving on to our informational items. The first one is a graduation date proposal, and our high school principals are here this evening to present us with that information.
Yep.
So welcome.
Welcome, Ryan and Rick, R squared. Thanks for representing the high school principals. I just want to be clear for the whole board that this is an information item tonight. The principals have come with a proposal to the executive cabinet about moving up a graduation date in the year 2020. And we are in support of their proposal, but we're really just wanting the board to know this as information item. And assuming there aren't any problems with this, then we'll ask HR to consider putting this in the calendar for the 2020 school year. So, thank you.
So the way the calendar falls for this coming school year, the 1920 school year, if we followed the traditional way that we time that we hold graduation, it puts it at it would put it at June 13th for the face-to-face schools and June 14th for eAchieve, which is halfway through June. That's awfully late in the school year. And so we are considering and proposing that we move that up by 1 week. That would mean that the seniors would be graduating with 2 days left in the approved school year, but that's not, I mean, there are other districts that do that. Mugwanago's seniors just graduated on Sunday, and they still have a full week of school left. Pewaukee's seniors just graduated, and there's a couple of days left. So it certainly is not like this is without precedent. Even this school year here in Waukesha, because of snow days, the seniors are graduating, and then everybody else has to come back one more day. So really, of all the bullet points that are listed here, the one that sticks out to me most is the last one, that it's just simply gets us one more week into the summer than what is traditionally done, just the way the calendar falls this year. Were there any you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, our teachers of seniors are used to this. As Rick said, this year we're doing something very similar. It will be one more day next year, but it's not a big deal to have our seniors get out early, and then our final exam schedule will do well with those 2 extra days next year. And really highlighting, if you're a senior and you come those 2 days the next week, you sit there for 3 days waiting to graduate that following Saturday. There's a lot of time in between there for lots of things that can be done, lots of things that can happen, and I think all of our bullet points highlight that. So if we can get them out, similar to what we're doing this year, I think it benefits our seniors to a great extent. So, any questions?
Mr. Baumgart.
Even though this is an information item, we're going to start a discussion.
Yeah.
Question. A question and a comment. The question is, if they graduate on the Saturday, will you have done everything you need to do to get them to know whether they are graduates or not? I mean, you're okay with this? I mean, you will know Friday afternoon that they will be graduating on Saturday, passed all their tests or whatever?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
good. And the other comment is simply this: every once in a while, something comes to us that actually makes sense. Thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Really?
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Como?
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I mean,
Right.
and whoever thought of the idea, I'm not sure which principal gets the most credit here, but you can take it, Rick.
Group.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're just discussing, and we're like, what's
No, I don't have a problem with that, and I do appreciate you coming to the board, just giving us a heads up on it early enough, and not just
Right.
like with 2 months to go or something like that, and then all of a sudden we're really having to think a little bit more about this and pushing for time, but
Right.
Appreciate it.
Question for Jody. Jody, how would this be then communicated to parents and students or the community? Or
Right, so every year when we publish the family calendar, it'll
Right.
just be presented on there, and then the individual high school principals will send out their communications to families as well.
Good. Awesome. Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
So I'm not sure how Waukesha did it, but I know in a lot of schools with all the snow days they had to extend their calendar, I'll speak into the microphone. I think he thinks my microphone's off, but it's on. And in this case, I mean, we have the same thing happen next year. We end up adding a bunch of snow days. It makes it much harder to manage things into the schedule if we push those 2 days back. So it's not really a slam dunk in my mind. This only makes sense because we can't start the school year early. We're doing this because we're constrained in when we can start our school year.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And so it's something that, because Madison government, state government, dictates the start of the school year, we're having to somehow work around this at the end of the summer months. So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. So I appreciate the effort to try and make it so that overall it's a win. But I mean, it's just another example where, you're trying to make someone happy on one end, and on the other end, it makes it hard for, the kids that need to graduate, us to run a school system, things like that. So I struggle with the idea of letting kids graduate 2 days early when the rest of the kids still have to go those 2 days of school. And so conceptually, it's kind of a struggling point for me, but I understand why you're doing it. So I guess I'll ask Ms. Landish, what's the statutory requirements for educational hours for kids? And it doesn't change whether you're a senior or a junior. It's the same, right?
No, we have, so I did not calculate this, but my good friends in HR did, and they said, I don't remember the hours, but we are well above and beyond the instructional time at all grade levels at the secondary level. So this was a non-issue in terms of any instructional minute barriers whatsoever. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can give you that if you'd like.
I think we should have that as part of, just to understand.
I can give it to you in the board update on Friday.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Mr. Como.
I just want to ask a technical question. I thought that our board could petition DPI to start the year earlier if we wanted to. Is that correct? Do we still have the ability to do that? I'm not suggesting that we do that in this case, but, and I know we have talked about that at other times throughout being on the board for a number of years, and it never really gained any traction. I don't necessarily believe that this community would really be in favor of that, but technically we could if we wanted to, and that's what I really wanted to find out.
Are we restricted by, Mr. Cook, construction?
There are,
I'm
sorry, there are certain criteria that you have to meet in order to get that. So for instance, a lot of the schools that get a start in August are schools that have the International Baccalaureate program, which has a certain testing and instructional minute requirement that goes ahead of time. Some districts can apply for a waiver that gives you a few days ahead of Labor Day. But there is an application process that ultimately gets approved at the DPI. So it's not a guarantee that you get it.
But if you were going under major construction in a district, you could apply and it would probably be granted.
Major construction is a reason, but the experience that I've had in talking to other districts is they tend to let you start later than in September and end later than in June. Again, the preference is Labor Day is still the preferred start time, and I believe a lot of that is based off of the tourism industry that impacts certain areas in the state. They want us to honor that Labor Day start time.
Anything else?
If I could just add to
Go
that,
ahead,
they've
Mr.
also
Cook.
talked
Yep.
to us about the number of minutes in a day. So they don't talk about the number of days of instruction anymore.
Right.
They talk about the number of minutes in a day.
Right.
And so you have to hit a certain number of instructional minutes. And if those minutes are hit in 170 days, you do it in 170. If they're hit in 190, you do it in 190 days. A lot of it is structured off of how long the school day is.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien.
So, instructional minutes, how do they define that? If I have a senior and he goes for 3 credits, 3 hours a day, he has way less instructional minutes that he actually applies during that year and can still graduate, right? That's assuming that that's all he needs to graduate. So he's not actually getting the instructional minutes. You're offering the instructional minutes, but he's not actually getting the instructional
Correct. It's the number of offered minutes of instruction, and that's why a weather day will have an impact on the number of minutes because you had to call school that day. If you remember back, I believe it was February-ish, there was a kind of a push from school districts and people at the state to have the DPI, the assistant or the state superintendent, waive the number of minutes requirements. They said it was a governor's requirement, whatever it might be. There still is the issue of meeting the number of required minutes in a school year, offered minutes in a school year.
Well, I don't think this weather pattern is going to change. I think we're going to have more snow days going forward. Not that I'm good at being Ben Franklin, but maybe.
Sure, off to that start right now.
Yeah. Anything else from board members? Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Next, we have Tahiri to give us an update on the Whittier Achievement Gap Reduction, the AGR grant update.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to try to airplay this. Give me a minute here. Oh. All right. My first year at Whittier is about to end, so we wanted to give you a report. And last year, yes. For the AGR grant, which is an Achievement Gap Reduction Grant that is provided to Whittier. So the purpose of me being here this evening is just to explain what the AGR grant is and how we use it at Whittier, and the impact it's having on student achievement, and what's working and what's not working, and what we need to tweak in order to increase student achievement. So what we chose to use with the AGR grant is small class sizes. So at Whittier, our kinder, our first, second, and third grade classrooms all have 18 or below students in each classroom. Why? It will support closing the opportunity gap. Our small guided group instruction is part of our theory of action this year, and it allows teachers to instruct a small group of 2 to 4 students in Tier 2 and Tier 3, 4 days out of the week. And then it also allows us to build in our master schedule that intervention time where teachers are seeing 2 to 4 students 40 minutes a day for a double dose of instruction to support closing that gap. So at the beginning of the year, we really talked about what our data was telling us. And this triangle is what we want to see at a Tier 1 on the bottom of the triangle is where 80% of our students are achieving. A Tier 2 of supportive intervention is probably about 10 to 15 of our kids, and then Tier 3 should be 5 to 8% of our kids. But coming into Whittier at the beginning of the year, when we analyzed our data, this triangle was pretty much flipped upside down. So we had a lot of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions that were needed, so we had to be strategic on how our intervention block was built into our master schedule. The data also provided us information of like having our staff focus on fidelity of the master schedule that we created, but also fidelity of the resources that we have and the curriculum that we have, and ensuring that the consistency school-wide is becoming the norm at Whittier. Just a few data points that we were able to build and celebrate on. I am presenting the data on kinder, first, second, and third. And our kindergarten, what you have in front of you should be this AGR grant form. That in kindergarten and first grade, we do have great celebrations. So for kindergarten and literacy, we have 77% of our students are leaving proficient. In first grade, we have 56% of our kids leaving proficient, so it was a jump from 44 at the beginning of the year to 56. And in kindergarten and reading was a, what do you guys have here? We don't have a kindergarten running record at the beginning of the year. They don't give kindergarten running records. But at the end of the year was a great success of you have 84% leaving proficient.
Harry?
Yes.
Numbers here and the numbers up there are different.
Yes, we had to recalculate. I have to give you the updated one of this one. I apologize.
Okay.
We were looking at our theory of action for our ESIL was proficiency, how many kids are moving proficiency level, which is different than what the AGR grant requires of what is just the proficiency of students. That make sense?
This is, yes.
Yes, we will be updating that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. In math, in kindergarten was exciting because even though it shows 11 out of 25. Well, none of this is, I think I have the, let me think for a minute. So, we'll double check this, I'm sorry. But in front of you right now, we have 20 out of 32, 60% in fall-based data, and 14 out of 28, 50% proficiency. In math, we were able to grow 15% proficiency to 44% proficiency in first grade. So the biggest thing with this, as I share the data with you, is in kinder and first grade, what I want to build the momentum in Whittier is that if we build that foundation in kindergarten and first grade, we should start seeing that impact in second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. It does take time as we're building the consistency school-wide of our workshop model and ensuring fidelity to our curriculum and our schedule to ensure those instructional minutes are being met. At our second and third grade, we struggled a little bit this year, and I think it was partially part of understanding what holes, what gaps we're filling in the foundations of our workshop model. So second grade in reading, we're leaving at 9% proficiency. And then at second grade mathematics, we're leaving at 9% proficiency. Third grade reading, we're leaving at 24% proficiency. And math, we're leaving at 24% proficiency. So some of the things that we worked on this year, each grade level that I really pushed upon was collaboration and planning and ensuring that all our teachers are using our lesson plan templates in order to be detailed in what instruction is being delivered. The use of data and digging deep to what the data really is telling us. And our teachers being able to flexibly group and meet grade level student needs. With our SEW rigorous curriculum, our high expectations, Whittier will continue to strive to be a school of excellence with our students making high growth and academic achievement. And although our second and third grade, we didn't make as much achievement as we wanted to, what I shared with the staff is, this is my quote for this year, is take it day by day, results don't come overnight, change doesn't happen immediately, and keep working towards your goal. So where Whittier was at when I walked in, there's a lot of work to continue to be done. I'm hoping that I build the strong foundation of what the structure that it needs to be able to come to fruition and continue student achievement. That is it for today for our AGR grant at Whittier. What questions can I answer?
Mr. Bryan.
Yeah, I guess. When I look at the left-hand column and it says, put my glasses back on. It's described the baseline and growth the identified students make for each K through 3 reading and mathematics. It gives a number of 35% of students will move up one proficiency level in literacy and math. The charts you show to the right doesn't tell me, I don't believe,
No.
how you're doing relative to those standards that you've outlined. So it's not, normally I want to say, okay, you set these as benchmarks. I want to see, this is what we said we would do. I'd like to see the measurements against what we said we would do, because you're just giving me numbers that, I mean, maybe, I don't want to look at this one because it might be wrong, but I guess I will look at it because it's the one in front of me. Maybe moving from 44% to 56% proficient is good. Okay. But if we're trying to close the achievement gap between the student population at Whittier and, say, the student population at Bethesda, I don't know how good that is. We're not going to make that comparison, but we could compare it to the overall target, baseline target, to see how we're doing in meeting our goals for Whittier.
So the left column is what I was talking about, our 3-year of action and our SAIL work this year. So I really wanted to support the teacher's understanding of how many students per grade level they had to move at least one proficiency level to reach our SLO as school-wide. So the AGR grant doesn't measure that, how many students we moved proficiency level. The AGR grant is really wanting to know how many kids are leaving proficient. So it's not moving proficiency level, how many kids were moving proficiency level. The data that's in here on the right, showing the data of K1, we're using AVMR for math, and we're using running records. But for 2nd through 5th grade, we use MAP to measure proficiency. I don't know if that helps understand
it doesn't
a little
because
bit.
you're setting a parameter. I mean, someone set a parameter. I'm not saying you set the parameter, but someone set a parameter that if it's there should be a measurement that's shown in front of us to say how we are at meeting that parameter. Not saying, well, it's not clear on how we're doing relative to what we said we would do. Not saying you said that, but someone who wrote the
I
application.
can understand the confusion for sure.
Okay.
Mr. Baumgart.
The grant itself and when we applied it, and I'm wondering if there's any impact there on the difference between the growth in the K and 1 and the kind of failure growth in the 2 and 3. Did this grant come into play? I don't remember when it came into play and when you started applying it. Is it new this year?
No, it's not new this year. It's been...
It's a carryover from SAGE. So, I mean, we've had this at Whittier, I don't know how many years. Melissa, I'm looking back at you. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that timing didn't have any impact on the 2nd and 3rd graders? Okay, I get
And that's
it.
what I think one of my goals coming in this year was to match the power of having a small size classroom to our district expectations, which I felt were missing. So allowing that, the power of saying, oh my gosh, I can still have 3 groups in this workshop model of literacy and be able to close that gap on a consistent basis wasn't there yet until we brought in the master schedule this year and to really maximize our instructional time from the minute the kids walked in to obviously the minutes that they left. And then also building that intervention block to give that double doses of instruction.
So that part changed this year, though?
Yes.
That application part?
Yes.
Okay.
So the part of me implementing a few things this year of hoping to build that foundation is where I hope that the AGR grant will continue to show that student achievement in the next 3 to 5 years.
Mr. Cuomo.
The double dose of intervention, is that just for kindergartners and first graders, or
No.
is that for every student?
We are doing it school-wide. So we
Okay.
have, within the master schedule, we created an intervention block from kindergarten to 5th grade.
Okay. So is every student essentially participating in it, or?
Nope, only kids that are falling in tier 2 and tier 3.
Okay.
So-
And can you tell me what that number is approximately, a percentage of students?
Of students falling in that tier, tier 2 and tier 3.
2 and 3.
I don't have those numbers in front of us, but if you think of that triangle.
I won't hold you to them, but I mean approximate.
Well, when we have about 32% of our kids, from the data that I walked into, we were less than 30% of students proficient or advanced coming in, literacy or math.
So probably 70% is a rough guess. Okay. How many more FTEs, teachers and assistants, and maybe you guys will have to answer this, do we get in the classroom via this grant? So we have this grant money,
Yep.
right? And I'm assuming that most of that money is going to go towards hiring teachers and assistants to bring the classroom size down. So did we get one extra teacher and one extra assistant, or roughly what was that? What's that
It doesn't
mix?
really go toward assistants, Melissa, you can answer that, but it's just teachers. So like, for example, because I have 2 kindergarten teachers at 18 below, and depending on enrollment, instead of having to collapse to come down to a kindergarten classroom and to avoid maybe a K1 split, the grant allows us to have those 2 kindergarten classrooms with 18 below. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense as an example, but I'm just wondering, are we injecting one teacher, or are we injecting 4 teachers.
So we get
due to the grant.
We get a pool of money, and if I remember this question from last year, we talked about it last spring as well. I think we come out somewhere in $250,000 in funding, is what I heard. Which, if you were to apply that to a teacher, depending on if it's an early teacher or veteran teacher, you're looking at about 2.5 to 3 FTE that we get reimbursement from the state on for this. How that gets dispersed at Whittier, I don't think it exactly comes out to 1 additional teacher per grade level because we're talking about 4 grades here.
Okay. One of the things that I'd like to see over time is trending information from year to year, not just 1 year. If we could have that at some point in time.
Great point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baumgart.
No, I'm just thanking you. Oh.
Mr. O'Brien.
So obviously this is a program about small class sizes, the old SAGE program being carried onward to at Whittier under a different name, I guess. What about those children that are high achieving children every school has high achieving children. I'm sure Whittier has high achieving children. How are they not being held back by being in a student population where so much energy and time is focused on trying to make the rest of the population proficient? Are we giving the opportunities for those kids to excel?
Question. So the universal curriculum at a universal tier 1 approach should be getting everybody at grade level. And our intervention block also supports those kids that are advanced to have that built-in time to have projects or extended projects that they can work on independently. And with our current GE $25,000 grant, with the makerspace coming in, will allow them to be able to use that space to continue that the advancement.
So I guess the question, and that's great, glad to hear that, it's a great answer. The question I would have is, let's say if it was my child, okay, and my child was, some people like to use the word gifted. Let's just say advanced. I don't really like the word gifted. If I wasn't happy with the opportunities that existed at Whittier, and where would I go? What would I do? How would I deal with that? In the rest of Waukesha, we have school choice, and we can send, and they can petition into STEM. Do you know what part of your parent population would petition to have their child placed into STEM, or are you aware of any of your parents that would like to have their child placed into STEM?
I would not know that.
And
They're interested, obviously, in regards to other schools, as much as some are wanting to stay at Whittier, some are wanting to leave Whittier. But I think that's in every school, too.
So you haven't seen any outreach by the district to encourage parents to apply their child, that they have to go through the lottery system, but to apply into STEM?
Is your question, though, are Whittier parents wanting to apply to STEM schools?
Has there any effort by the district to encourage Whittier parents to apply to STEM schools that you're aware of? Okay. I would ask why not. There should be the information going to these parents that if their child would be better suited for that academic environment.
Oh, yes, but parents know that they're able to do that at Whittier, as parents at Whittier, and they have the information like everybody else does. So, I always say it's a parent's choice, the parents, and I always do welcome parents that, parents need to come and visit schools. And really walking into Whittier, the perspective or the understanding of what people thought was happening at Whittier or how it's being worked, and our student achievement data is not as high as we want it to be yet, but the community needs to know about Whittier and the demographics that we serve and the beautiful diversity that's in there in regards to the community that's in there. Whittier should be as valued like everybody else in every other school. And unfortunately, it's not seen like that in our community, and I think it's our job. I think it's all your jobs to help Whittier look that way. You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you.
Could you tell me a little bit about, just one more question,
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about the grant, and is it for so many years, and what criteria exist to continue the grant?
For the AGR grant?
Yes, do you know that information?
I don't know the criteria on how long we can keep it. At this moment, I know we are continuing it, and we'll be receiving it for next year, for sure. But I even thought about it this year in regards to the options of using the AGR grant for, there's 3 different options. I can't remember the third one, but one is small class sizes, an instructional coach, in addition to an additional instructional coach, and something else. But I really thought about it, and the small sizes should be making an impact once we solidify and strengthen the universal curriculum. Because we have a rigorous curriculum in Waukesha, we got to make sure it's being done to fidelity.
And then kind of a related question, what kind of transition is happening with you and the new principal at Whittier?
The new principal at Whittier will be announced soon, hopefully. And I will be definitely making contact of just being able to sit together and just being able to transfer all my thinking and vision that I had for Whittier, and hoping the groundwork of the foundation pieces are going to stay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Brien?
We have 2 principal openings, Whittier and South, and neither one of them have been put to the board for consideration yet. So we don't have a new principal at Whittier, and we don't have a new principal at South.
But the plan would be to help that person transition.
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
That transition will
Plus, you're
definitely
still
be
within
needed.
the district.
Yes.
As a resource.
Will be helpful, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep. Next this evening, under informational items, we have District Year in Review. Dr. Cook and Jody.
All right, so thank you. Stacy's going to pull up our presentation. This is the second year we've decided to just give the Teaching and Learning Committee sort of a year in review, just a small summary of what has been in the hopper for teaching and teaching and learning and student services. So the second slide will just briefly go over, nothing is changing in terms of our district goals. Our strategic goals still remain the same. There are 3 overarching goals that the district has set forth globally to increase career, college, and community readiness. Our increase coherence around our systems of behavior and both academic support for all students. And then our third pillar in terms of increasing performance and engagement of all staff. So as we continue to work from the executive level through our principals, through our teachers, those are what we hope to continue to accomplish as a system. And we've set those last year, and they'll continue at least for the next 3 years. Wanted to remind you of, in your board packet last week, hopefully you got a nice big packet from me around our quarterly reviews, our end of our reviews with our principals. And so it's really hard to highlight their presentations in a simple way, but I tried really to produce for you what were, in my opinion, some standalone or some highlight slides that would really show the work that the teachers have done, including student outcomes where I could. So you'll see all of our schools and a couple, 2, 3 highlight slides from each of them. What I wanted to still focus on for you is to say that, I think this has evolved. Principal evaluation certainly and supervision has evolved over the years in our district, and I think Joe and I are pretty proud of the outcomes from our principals. We have been able to secure some accountability around what we're asking from them. And so these 5 areas are really part of our SAIL process, and they continue to be what we ask principals to report out for us. So we ask every school in our system to focus a direction with 2 or 3 goals around whatever the work is, right? Whatever the root cause data is showing that the students need. We always highlight as part of their school improvement plans that they are cultivating a collaborative culture among their staff, because we know no matter what goals you set, If not everyone is on board and has ownership and efficacy around that, not much will happen. The third area that we care deeply about is deepening learning for our staff. And we really take pride in making sure that the demands that are put on our teachers are well supported by professional learning opportunities for them. The fourth area then around securing accountability is just that. We're asking principals to regularly monitor the adult instructional practices happening in their building. And we have, an increased level of accountability around student results, probably more than I've ever seen from the district. So we have work to do in that area, certainly in the area of monitoring and just being data literate. But Amy Riebel has done a nice job, especially this year, in building capacity among our building principals so that they can become more data literate in that area. And then the last area, I kind of touched on that, the data and key results. So more than ever, we are looking to see if the things we do every day, right, if our actions and our doing are really turning into impact for kids. So you've heard at least 3 of the board members here that have been on teaching and learning this year and last year have heard from principals throughout the presentations and throughout the year about their SAIL theory of action. And so this shows just an example of what our director teams, meaning teaching and learning and student services, have put forth as our 3 global goals going into next school year. And you have that for your reference in front of you, so I won't read it. I'm just going to paraphrase that we know that our goals for next year are to help with teacher collective efficacy. That's the first goal. The second goal is to continue to build a common language and expectations around not just academics, but student behavior in our system. And our third goal is continue to shore up all the lovely acronyms in our system, meaning our professional learning communities, our student services teams, our problem-solving teams, all our teams that are really wrapping around instruction and kids and how to best support them. We want to make sure those teams are using data to do their intentional planning. And so this is just a looking ahead. I want to remind you all that we do have our upcoming SAIL days next week, coming up fast and furious, Wednesday and Thursday. It's out at West again. I know many of you over the years have come to just either listen in or contribute with teams, so feel free to do that. Lunch is at noon both days. If you want free lunch, that's always a good incentive. But feel free to stop by. We have, I think I looked, 229 or 230 participants over those 2 days across our organization that will be involved between teachers and administrators. And then again, that's just the 3 pillars of our focus with principals next year, helping them build teacher collective efficacy, helping build a common language around behavior and academics, and helping everybody really intentionally plan using data, using student data. Oh, this is still me. I thought I was done. This is a reminder. Dan Keyser, Melissa mentioned it briefly when we had the academic standards conversation this morning, or this evening. Thank you. The curriculum design process is in its second year running smoothly, third year up and running throughout our system. And we're proud of the universal access and sort of the equity that's built into this very fine-tuned process. What I I wanted to just give you an update on is next year you'll continue to see heavy work and updates in these two areas specifically, both in social studies K-12 and in math at the secondary level. So these are two areas where you'll see considerable updates from us going into next school year. And then lastly, I think 1 or 2 months ago, we had a wonderful Avid update by Amanda Wagner. And this is just really a celebration slide here, wanting to show you that we continue to grow our capacity 3, 9, 13, meaning those are the number of schools, right, coming on the grid over the last 3 years, and you'll see the schools listed. So again, huge celebration. You know, today all day we had Dee Garcia, Dan, and several of our middle school administrators and teachers involved in Avid Excel training. So this just really is a huge highlight for our district. It's well supported by our board, and I thank you for that. I think the sky's the limit when it comes to Avid implementation here, and the teachers are very excited and on board, and I'm just thrilled about the way we're heading here.
So this past school year, we've continued our work around mental health and social emotional learning. The social emotional learning curriculum has been implemented in grades kindergarten through 5. Going into next school year, we're going to be expanding that to our 4K level and then through 8th grade through our middle schools. And we're using the second step curriculum to accomplish this. We have implemented school-based mental health services, so we're contracting with Waukesha Family Services, where we have an in-house provider at 11 locations this year. That is going to expand to 16 next year, where we are going to actually have a mental health professional in school to work with students who have the most need. We have, over time, increased our student services staffing, our psych, social workers, and counselors to meet the growing needs of the students that we have at the school, and this particularly is around the social and emotional needs of students, and to assist in that bridge between the school and the mental health services that some of our students need. And then just as a reminder, as part of the safety grant, all of our staff have been provided just a basic level, but 3 hours of trauma-informed care to meet that grant requirement. That was very popular among our staff, and we're going to continue it into 2 more years of professional learning for all staff in the district. So our principals are planning this time in for staff during staff meetings next year. On to the next slide. If you remember back to January, Dr. Gray, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more in the next item, but Dr. Gray provided a forum for educators to come and talk about what some of their concerns were, and student discipline was a concern. So in February, we convened a team. It started out with about 30 staff members and grew to nearly 60, where we talked about a variety of topics in and around student discipline. And like I said, I'll get into it a little bit more in the next presentation. But I think the thing that to know is that this is going to be ongoing work for us. We have a time. I surveyed the team. The survey closes at the end of this week, so I'll find out. But we're looking at an August time to reconnect as a team and to lay out what our plans that the district needs to do going into next school year, and then what are some of the key points of school-based plans that we would like to see. So that'll be coming up in August. Special education. We, as a district, have this year exceeded 2,000 students who are receiving special education services. As part of that, we're making sure that our staff is up to date and in service in the areas that they need. Such areas are college and career-ready IEPs, making sure that students are ready to leave us. Even as early as in the elementary level, beginning to talk about what that post-secondary life needs to look like. Talking about behavior needs for students and providing professional development in those. We've also this year established and been able to deliver that all special educators, aides, and professional staff are trained in nonviolent crisis intervention. This has been a cumbersome process. due to the aide turnover that we have. Our teachers are very stable for us and do an excellent job, but we do have aides that start the year with us and they find a different position somewhere else, and then we hire new aides. So making sure that we've got a touch point for staff throughout the year so that we can get them trained as soon as possible from their hire. We are looking at continuing our professional development and literacy instruction. For those members of the Teaching and Learning Committee, you maybe remember back 3 years ago, we brought in the Sunday reading intervention. Mr. Dietz, I think you saw some of the professional development associated with that. We're going to continue that going forward so that we get to a point where any student who needs that reading intervention is going to have a highly qualified staff member. It's been a process to build to that, given that we have a lot of teachers, but we are going in that direction. We've also had a lot of staff certified in the CERTs, the Autism Evaluation Model, if you're familiar with it. We try to get between 15 and 20 staff members trained and certified in that so that they can come back to school when school starts and really dig into what a student's need is. Is it a communication need? Is it a sensory need? So that we can adapt the IEP to meet that student's needs instead of having to rely on an outside consultant to assist us, while we still do use that. Our procedural compliance self-assessment, if you remember back, I believe it was 6 years ago, just prior to my arrival, the district completed the procedural compliance self-assessment. This is a 5-year process. Every 5 years, a district has to go through this. So next year is our preparatory year for that, and then we'll be conducting that self-assessment in the near future, 2021 school year. It really is an in-depth exploration of what we're doing with a sample of IEPs, making sure that the IEP is written to compliance, making sure that the student is being given access to the instruction that is written in the IEP, making sure that the teacher's plans support the instruction that's written in. And so the process has evolved into a much more in-depth analysis. We'll be working with the Department of Public Instruction on that for the 2021 school year. And then making sure that we've got vertical alignment in special education. Where when you look at, hopefully when you look at a special education program, you are releasing the responsibility and the independence to the student as they go forward in school. So if you're diagnosed with a disability in the elementary school, that we're remediating the skill, but we're also teaching the compensatory strategies that student needs to become more and more independent as then they move towards transitioning, again, from high school to their time beyond high school. And so we're really working on making sure that our high school teachers know what our middle school teachers are doing and likewise down to the elementary level so that we can reduce the impact that transitions happen in grade 5 to grade 6 and grade 8 to grade 9. Those are generally the biggest stumbling blocks for our students in special education. New school, new environment, new teachers, new expectations. We really want to reduce that impact. This year we have, I guess I would say, going back a year, for those of you who were on the committee last year, we talked about the multi-level systems of support, the MLSS system, and we did an investigation last school year into which model are we going to be trying to tailor our practices to. And we picked the DPI model. Going into this year, as we explored that model and we explored some of our practices, we looked at, and we found that we needed to develop some consistency across our systems around professional learning communities, which would be that grade level planning, that curricular planning that teachers are doing, on a weekly basis to make sure that their students are progressing, that they're hitting the standards, that the assessments are valid, and so on and so forth, which also led us to a discussion on our student services team meetings, where you're starting to engage a team at the school to see what school-wide issues exist, and then to look at our problem-solving teams where we're talking about an individual student. And so through this process, we've created some common templates for schools. We've been receiving some feedback on that as the year goes forward, and we are actively making adjustments to that going into the next school year. But that's given us a framework then to get into that second bullet point, which, implementing a common set of practices in these areas so that we can provide the correct intervention to the student who needs it. So for example, as we've talked about Sunday reading, for students in special education, we're looking at what holes do we need to fill before a student gets to that level of referral, so that we can begin doing that pre-referral work. We have, as years have gone on, had disproportionate designations from the state for certain student groups, for instance, African American students with specific learning disabilities or emotional behavioral disabilities. We really want to prevent special education from being used as that intervention unless it's absolutely needed. So that's what this process is helping us on. And that is the last slide on our update. So we're talking about getting together in September again. So we're willing to take any questions that you may have.
Mr. Como.
So next year, you're going to be preparing for this audit.
Yes.
And then you have it the following year, and it's a self-assessment.
It is.
Who do you think on your team is going to be involved in that assessment? And do you have a sense of how much time? Have you been through one of these, Joe?
I have, in my prior districts, I've conducted them, and I would say that, like I mentioned, it has gotten a little bit more involved. We have elementary and secondary department chairs that work in our district, so we've designated a team leader at the building level so that we can get that month-by-month feedback from them as to how things are going and what additional supports do they need. So we'll have our department chairs involved in it. Jason, Patty, and Karen will be involved in facilitating this. We also benefit from the fact that we've got a number of teachers who are working towards their pupil services license, so their administrative license, and we're going to engage them in this work over the course of the summer and then next school year to give us a sense of what adjustments do we need to make within our IEP development, so that when that assessment comes up, we can have done a lot of the heavy work beforehand, and hopefully the assessment doesn't look too bad. I would say that in the districts that I've worked in, including Waukesha when I first arrived, there was correction needed in the system. It's very common. In Waukesha, we'll probably have to sample somewhere between 30 and 40 IEPs, probably 50 or so evaluations. There will be some errors in there. I would bet that there would be. That being said, what procedural compliance, professional development do we need to do beyond that? And then we'll get into a corrective action plan with the DPI.
So do we determine that, or DPI?
We do. We do, but the DPI comes in and validates. So we'll do the work on the front end. We'll submit our results. The DPI will take those results. They'll do on-site visit. They'll go through and make sure that we were more or less honest with what we reported. And then if we do have corrections in there, they'll assign those corrections to us. That being said, we do have what we believe is a very effective professional development model for staff that includes anything from a month-by-month department meeting with our chairs to the professional development that we provide in our summer institute, to the ability to grab special education staff, bring them together on professional development days. So we know that we have a vehicle to deliver it. We just need to make sure that we go through this assessment and figure out exactly what it is that we need.
So it sounds like it's a fairly intense process, but could be very valuable.
It has been. For instance, when I arrived in Waukesha, a team had completed it prior to my arrival, and one teacher didn't do one IEP that was selected for the audit, and we were non-compliant in all 20 areas of the audit. So it was very simple corrective action. We put some steps in place, like daily email reminders as to which IEPs are coming up, which IEPs are coming due, the principal's in the loop on that. So we've really created a vehicle to make sure that there was some site-based oversight of this, because the principals serve as the LEAs. They're at the IEP meetings. They know who's coming up. We wanted to make sure that we could give them a tool to help them with this. But that one missing IEP turned into non-compliance across all areas for us. We had some other areas where, dates might not exactly have been aligned. The bane of any special educator's existence is the placement page where you have to, the IEP was developed on this time, it'll be implemented. Mr. Dietz is nodding his head. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. It may be January and it just turned 2020 and the educator's mind is still in 2019. They put 2019 down. Well, those are small things that will get you a hit in the audit that we need to make sure we've got a system to correct internally.
Okay. Are parents involved in the process at all?
There is a parent outreach component to it, yes. There's an indicator, and it's slipping my mind as to which indicator 8, that does involve parent surveys, where we are able to find out parent engagement, family engagement in the IEP process.
Okay, thank you for
There's also
sharing
a
some details.
post-secondary, just not to go too far, but there's indicator 14, which is a post-secondary. So we're going to be working with St. Norbert's College to survey our graduates 1 year out to see where they're at in their post-secondary journey.
I think I'll have to take a break after you guys get done with that. I'm exhausted just listening to it. Thank you for sharing the details.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much, Jody. And Dr. Cook? Last informational item tonight is a discipline committee update to expand further on what you've already shared with us.
Yeah, so as I shared, Dr. Gray at Waukesha 1 had a, I'm just going to get connected to boardroom. Dr. Gray had listening sessions at the Waukesha 1 conference. He had 2 listening sessions, and I believe he said he had between 80 and 100 staff members attend. And one of the common themes that came from that was discipline or behavior or however it was categorized. And so we, based off of that, we formed a discipline committee. And the original group of the committee was invited by those individuals who attended. So Dr. Gray gave me the names of some staff members that attended it. We invited those staff members and their principals to more of an open forum discussion in and around student discipline. And what you see up here was our first agenda, where I posed the question to the group, why are we here and what do we hope to accomplish? We had a variety of topics come up. Anything from, people wanting to make sure that the district has proactive strategies in place, restorative practices. Staff members wanted to have clear black and white disciplinary practices that are used. So if you do this, it equals this. Some staff members talked about how they feel like if they write a student up and send the student to the office, they don't feel like anything's happening or they don't know if it did happen. There were staff members there that shared that a high school student will have 7 or 8 classes and they'll go from 7 or 8 classes and they've got 7 or 8 different expectations as they go into those classes. Some people shared that there are staff members that enforce the rules and don't enforce the rules. There were principals there that shared that there are some people that don't want to do the proactive work, like call home, engage parents, have those common classroom expectations, and they're sending kids in the office. So really, we talked about the full gamut of what you could talk about with student discipline. And then where we started this whole conversation was in and around our board policies on student discipline. And so we shared what those policies were to give everybody kind of a foundation as to, if you're get into a fight, it would fall to this level of the policy. If a student is suspended from school, it would be governed by this area of policy, because we wanted everybody to know if you're an administrator and something happens, we wanted the teachers to understand, we wanted to make sure that the administrators understood that this is what the board's expectation is, and here are the guidelines that Dr. Gray has established for us in their implementation. We shared a little bit, this first meeting was in February, so what we wanted to do is to talk about where we were at in the 18-19 school year as it related to major discipline. So where were our pre-expulsions at that time, and where were our expulsions? We then talked about what's required for a student who has a disability. The limit of 10 days of suspension, the manifestation determination process, making sure that we go back and look at behavior plans, looking at the supports and the strategies that are being taught to the students. So we had that talk because we wanted to have, a common understanding. And then again, by February, we showed some of the major discipline for students with disabilities. As the staff was talking a little bit about this, what we wanted to make sure that they understood was that we've got a number of students that are already alternatively placed. Because, a student with a disability or a student who has gone through an expulsion or an abeyance type contract, those students, our district is committed to making sure that they're educated. Some because we have to, some because we choose to make sure that we maintain that connection to those students. And so we've got 82 students in alternative placements that total $2.8 million. And again, this is going back to this hearing because we wanted people to understand if they're saying that nothing is being done around major discipline, we're actually investing $2.8 million, 30 plus FTE, if you were to equate that into bodies, into students who have committed or have major behavioral needs. Some of these students are individuals with autism who have sensory needs and communication needs that, in spite of all of our best efforts and multiple staff members working with them, we're just not able to meet. But again, this goes back to February. We then had a couple roundtables. We wanted to have an open forum for staff to talk about what are the most pressing behavioral issues that they are facing. I would commend the staff that engaged in these conversations because, while you could bucket it into insubordination, disrespect, they also had some much more in-depth conversations around this than, parents aren't responding to things, or again, inconsistency with expectations. I teach my 11th grade math class this way, but if you were to go next door, the teacher doesn't care if they come in late. They don't care if they have hats on. So it was really a very good format for our staff to talk. And then the second conversation that we had that night, if a teacher sends a student out of the classroom for behavior, what do the teachers expect? And so what we wanted to know was what's been tried, what is working, and what's not working. Again, we were fortunate that we had a group of staff that was willing to engage the superintendent, that was also willing to engage this conversation. And they shared a variety of things. They shared at the elementary level, staff had said that it was very difficult to get the parents engaged. Whereas at the secondary level, they said the consequences don't seem to matter. And so we saw that range in this conversation, but the key thing that came out of this discussion was the idea that the staff didn't feel like they knew what happened, right? You took the time to write the behavioral referral and you don't know what happens. And we had a pretty good conversation, it was a little technical in nature, about Infinite Campus. And so if I'm the teacher and Jody's the principal and I write a student up and Jody finishes her work in Infinite Campus, all I get is a notification that it was resolved. And then through this collaboration at Butler Middle School, the assistant principal who attended Jeffrey, he shared that what he does is cut and paste his disposition and sends it into an email. So right after that meeting, we addressed all of the administrators and asked that once you finish a referral, you cut and paste your disposition and then email that to the teacher so they'd know what the resolution was. Through feedback from this committee, they said that it was positive feedback. So they said that that was actually being implemented right away and was working. So then we had our second meeting in March. We reviewed a little bit about what we had talked about in February. What I would say is I'd commend the staff. I mean, a lot of times, people are giving up time away from their families, and they were willing to participate. We provided a little bit of Jimmy John's for dinner. Nobody was there asking to fill out a time card. They were really there to volunteer their time, and it's to be commended. We did talk a little bit about board policies 5600 and 5600.01. We've heard from students and we've heard from parents and we've heard from some teachers that these two policies do need some attention next school year because in some instances they're difficult for them to understand or possibly apply. But then there was also some, why is it a rule? If we're going to say no hats, why is it no hats? If we're going to say no hoods, why no hoods? I mean, those were some things that in the minds of some kids and some staff, the staff was reporting, it's not a big deal. So if we're going to have a rule, why is it there? And so if it's going back and working with some staff and some students on what these policies mean and coming back to the policy committee with recommendations, that may be a path that we take. If it's working with the staff and students as to why it's a rule and why it's important, making sure that they leave that meeting understanding why it is. So we're going to go back and do some work next school year in that area. We had a conversation around proactive and reactive strategies, and we asked that the groups that participated that night, if they would write down what is the proactive, what's the reactive strategy, and then ask who's assigned to it, right? Because when you get into the conversation around discipline, it's really easy for me as a teacher to point to Jody as the administrator and say, take care of this for me. And likewise, it's easy for Jody to say, well, you should have done this in the past. So what we wanted to do is really talk about what is it that we need to do and who's going to be responsible for it. So the team went through this activity. We got some very good strategies, some very good ideas, and we talked about that. We also did a little bit of homework. I tried not to provide too much, but one was on restorative practices, and the South teachers that attended shared this article with me. They did it as a professional learning thing at South. On restorative practices, the idea that if something happens, that you engage the person who did it is given the opportunity to engage the person who it was done to, and to have a conversation around how it made the person feel, about how to apply discipline, and then pull the student back into school, right? Because you don't want to discipline and then completely cut ties, because a 3-day suspension is a 3-day suspension. If it happens on Wednesday, that student's going to be back to work or back to school the following Monday, and you need that student in a position where they're ready then to re-engage their education and have a positive impact, a positive experience at school. We also talked about a USA Today article where there was a school district out in California that had been involved with PBIS, positive behavior interventions and supports, for 10 years. And they said that, the students were tearing the school apart and it wasn't working and there were no consequences. And so what we wanted to do was have this conversation about where are we in between exclusionary discipline, meaning suspension, expulsion, very punitive, and restorative practices, and making sure that whatever we do, whatever we talk about, we're going to meet the needs of the schools in Waukesha, because those needs could be very different based on site. We then moved into our April meeting. One of the things that two of the participants had shared with me was the concept of shall versus may in policy. Shall means you must, may means you have some discretion in it. And so when staff members were looking at policy, they were seeing this word may as this equals this, and that necessarily wasn't the intent of what was written. Because you may want to use a progressive disciplinary approach where if a student was disrespectful, and it was the only time they were disrespectful, would that then warrant a 1-day out of school or a 3-day out of school suspension? Or do you have that restorative corrective type conversation with the student, and then the next time they do it, then they get a harsher punishment? So we had that clarification of shall versus may, and then we talked about those two articles. And that's where we really began to talk about the gray area of student discipline. When you talk about having black and white policies, and we engaged this group, it was at this meeting too where the team went from 30 to approximately 60 staff members. When you engage people in this conversation and they'll be like, well, if a kid's disrespectful, we should suspend them. Then another staff member in the room said, well, what if that kid comes from an abusive environment where their mom was arrested or their dad was arrested the night before, and the kids witnessed all of it, and then they showed up to school at 7:30 in the morning and they weren't ready to learn. And so we talked then again, we kind of came into supports and proactive strategies, not saying that consequences aren't important, but what are we doing on the front end? One of the topics and themes that came up at a few of these is, at the elementary, I'm just asking Melissa quickly, like kids get about 100 minutes of literacy instruction a day. They're about 70, 80 minutes of math a day. We asked the question, how many minutes a day are you spending working on student behavior? If we look at behavior as something that needs to be taught, where you need to know what the expectation is of you, we can't guess that. We need to give them the target. We really had a rich conversation then about what teaching are we going to do. And that comes into the social and emotional learning that we're talking about. That goes into what Melissa and the coaches and the teachers are working on within that literacy model, where you establish those expectations, you teach those expectations, it's embedded every day. And then seeing what happens when it comes down to student behavior, so that if you've taught it, have they learned it, and making sure that we're teaching the proactive behaviors. Because again, behavior, everything is behavior. If you go to a high school and you see kids walking around with cell phones out and they're in a group of friends, or perhaps you've been out to dinner and you've been near a table where everybody's got their phone out and they're fiddling around on their phone instead of talking to each other, everybody's displaying a behavior. And we need to make sure that if we have an expectation that cell phones aren't going to be out or that hoods are going to be down, we're teaching people the why behind it, so that they can understand our position. So again, shall versus may in the documents. We reviewed our discussions at this particular point. We talked about the articles, and then we began to talk about data. We went into WISE-Local. I believe that last year Amy did some, tutorials with the board on how to access WISE-, and we looked at how is our data around attendance and discipline for our subgroups. So what does your whole school look like? And then if you were to break it out by groups, your white students, Hispanic, African American, students in special ed, so on and so forth, free and reduced, what do those numbers look like? And if you have groups that, for instance, are getting more office discipline referrals than the whole school, why is that happening? And if it's really a high number, say it's African American male students are outpacing the entire school for office discipline referrals, what are we doing then to work with the students who have come to us? If it's our free and reduced, if students on free and reduced lunch are coming in and they're displaying more off-task classroom behaviors and they're being sent to the office for it, and it's happening in the morning, they perhaps are hungry. What are we doing to then proactively address these things? We talked about that with attendance as well, because attendance is a marker of engagement. And so we as a group, we talked at this, we looked at this, and I provided them a template, just a very basic template for them to begin to fill this out. And I asked at that meeting, I forecasted that we look at, as Jody talked about with our sale planning and our work, if your school has a social and emotional need that it has to address, what are you doing to address it? And how are you prioritizing it? If you've got a sale plan going into next year where you don't feel that behavior is that priority, but you need to work on something with behavior, what committee are you forming at your school to help you address it? So we're asking that there's site-based planning on it. And then at our fourth meeting, we reviewed our work. Again, this was a larger team, 50, 60 staff members. We provided some articles. I provided some articles on school culture because I wanted them to understand where school culture impacts student behavior. Harvard, UCLA Today, and then Principal Leadership. Those are pretty good resources for us. And then we gave team planning time. So principals and teachers had an opportunity to really dig into their data and talk about what strategies or areas that they're going to bring to their school-wide team. And then this is what's going to kick our work off in August. So like I said before, we're going to be convening the team again in August. I'm getting some times from them as to what would be the most convenient for them. We're going to talk about what school plans have been laid out over the course of the summer. What are they prepared to launch? But then also, what is it that we need to communicate to students, to staff, and to parents around what these expectations are and what do those consequences mean? A couple of years ago, we had there was a rise, I believe it was last school year, kind of a rise in school threats where kids were, using the internet and making threats. And we sent out some communication to parents. And a few times I got feedback from parents saying, well, what if it's a joke? Well, if it's a joke, the fact of the matter is it's taken very seriously. And the board saw a number of those kids who made those threats through expulsion. And so really clarifying what those expectations are and what the consequences are to families so that they understand. This goes beyond the student handbook sign-off at the beginning of the year. This goes beyond the first or second day of school when the syllabus is passed out. This is something that's going to be ongoing expectation as we go forward until we feel that this student behavior, student discipline thing, that we really have our hands on it. So this summer, and I spoke with Joe about this a couple months back. 2 years ago, we had a board workshop on student behavior and student discipline. I'm asking that we have that again in August, where we're going to talk again more in depth around these topics, and we'll present the kind of the end product of what's happened this school year as far as major discipline. What do our referrals look like over the course of this year? What does that mean for our planning? We'll have some principals available to talk that night as well, to talk about what their plans are, to give you an opportunity to ask questions, but also to assure you that this is something that's being taken very seriously.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Como.
Yeah, thanks for the details, Joe. It's a lot to cover. I don't know if you ever got into, during your conversations with the four meetings that you had, safety of teachers and staff.
Yeah, we did. We talked about that, and that conversation began to center in and around students with disabilities. That tends to be the area where this if I were to have to bet if somebody was going to get hurt, chances are it'd be in and around a special education classroom. Our insurance data shows that our paraprofessionals are a group that does, is on the receiving end of that. And that's where we've really been intentional about the nonviolent crisis intervention, and then also the amount of staffing that we provide. When we're staffing special education services at our schools, we're doing that at the beginning of the year so that we can accommodate what has been the number of students that we have. Our staffing ratios at our schools are very, very good. Between our teachers, our caseloads, particularly for K through fifth grade, are very, very favorable. When I've done countywide and southeastern Wisconsin-wide comparisons, we're in a very good spot. This goes back, when Jen Wimmer was here and when Jim Hazley was here before that, we had very favorable. So making sure that we have enough staff, enough well-trained staff has been key to addressing that.
So do those numbers translate into safe environments for our teachers or not?
To the highest degree. So when you get into the safe environment, define the school safety. If you're looking at the threat assessment work that we've done, you saw some policy changes that have come up recently where we're looking at making sure that people identify an arrest record upon enrollment in school, or we're able to identify the threat of the school. We're working on that. When it comes down to a staff member getting hurt, our insurance data shows that a lot of that is in and around special education students. We didn't get into a conversation of, do you feel comfortable coming to work each day? That topic didn't come up. I would say that given my experience, that has varied based off of who has been in an individual teacher's classroom. I do know that given the students that we have in special education, the number of them, and the number of IEPs and the number of behavior plans, the work that we've done with consultants, we've tried to reduce that, but we didn't talk about any individual teacher's feeling of comfort at their school.
Okay, and fair enough. I mean, it's a big topic. It's hard to get our hands around. But obviously, from a board perspective, one of our important roles is to make sure that we have safe environments for education to occur. So as we continue to look at discipline as a topic, I guess I would like to have safety be part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
And I would say, though, Mr. Como, just to support that, the slide going back to February where we had 82 students that were alternatively placed,
yes,
and the $2.8 million that we're investing in that,
yes,
that is an investment in safety because those have been the students who have been the most aggressive in schools and have been removed.
Sure, that makes sense.
So that is an area that we've
that's
talked
an
about
active. That's one of the actions that we've been taking. Okay,
Mr. O'Brien.
Okay, this isn't a question. This is a comment. I mean, when you're dealing with quality, you go to root cause analysis. And I didn't hear anything about root cause analysis. I mean, we talked a lot about describing the problem, describing this, describing that, but until we get down to the root cause of why what's happening in our schools is happening, and can't we just blame it on the parents, and we can't just blame it on the kids, because we're the schools. We have to take accountability
Absolutely.
for it. So, to me, an important aspect of getting our hands around this is a focus on root cause analysis. I'll give a different example other than schools because it's a little bit easier to do that. I was listening today to Smerconish on the radio, and they were talking about a group that did a Facebook profile on police officers in 9 areas, Philadelphia being one of them, York, Pennsylvania being another. And they had, I think, 1,000 officers that they were able to get their Facebook postings on that were public. And over 33% of those officers had very negative stuff, right? So when you're talking about respect for police and how you interface with the community, you could see that that's one of those possible root causes is the mindset and attitude of those officers when they have this very negative stuff towards the people they're supposed to be serving. I'm not saying that happens in our schools, in Waukesha, but that's what I call root cause analysis. Okay? So when I look at, I know what it's like when a child's not engaged. They're a discipline problem. There's no doubt about that. They're a discipline problem whether they're smart or whether they struggle or whether they, if they're not engaged, that's the root cause for their discipline. So, and then how do you adjust that lack of engagement? And that's one of the root causes. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's one of them. How do we address that lack of engagement? I mean, we have all sorts of engagement opportunities for the high-achieving children, okay, in some cases. Maybe it doesn't fit them, maybe it does fit them. But what about the child that doesn't really want to be in the classroom? They want a different learning environment than the classroom. Maybe that's an engagement issue, okay? As a child gets older and older, it becomes clearer that the classroom environment's not right for them. They're looking for something else. And so I'm more interested in root causes because I don't think we're going to get at the depth of the problem without first going after what is the root cause of these problems. And I'm not saying anything specific, but I'm saying that needs to be a major focus.
And I agree with you 100%. What we looked to do as a committee this year was to identify variables that would have made that root cause difficult. So if you don't have common teacher expectation at a school level, for instance, where the kid is expected to follow all of the rules during the first period, and then during the second period, it's very loose in the classroom, and then the third period, then they're expected again to be right on top of things. If we don't identify what are those common expectations so that student knows what's expected of them, it's very difficult then to look at, is it an engagement issue? Or is it a situation where our start time of the day isn't convenient at a secondary level where a student is having to work at night to help support their family, or are we providing enough time in the morning for the breakfast program? Those are things that we know that we would be able to control first, and that's what our work has focused on this year. We will look further into that next year because engagement is a huge piece. Staff belief, one of the first components of the theory of action, in my mind was derived from some of these conversations where we had educators share, well, by the time they're in sixth grade, they're already, and it was almost like they're already lost by the time they're in sixth grade. They're in third grade and they're doing these things. What does this mean? This is coming, grades kindergarten through fifth grade at our schools. Well, if we're already not believing that these kids can learn and that we as educators have the ability to change that path for them, help change that path, then we need to get into that belief system of our educators. And so I agree with you. We've got layers to go on this. But we also have to make sure that we address some commonalities across our system so that we can then control for those other variables that are going to come forward as we continue with this work. I can assure you that we'll be here again in 12 months at the next June meeting with another year-long update on this work, and you'll see them in your board updates next year.
Mr. Cuomo.
As we have this dialogue, and I know one of the pushes that we've had for a number of years is that we want to have our students take ownership of their learning. I also believe that we can't lose track of having students take ownership of their behavior, that this needs to be thought through from multiple perspectives, including that ownership from the student perspective, because we can't do it all for them when it comes to behavior and or learning. So they have to take ownership, so we can't lose what their personal responsibility is as we go through this. But we have to be clear to them and set the expectations, as you were mentioning, as to what we expect of them.
Anything else? I look forward to the continuing conversation and the continued depth that you're going to be looking into this. I think it has huge implications for overall achievement if we can start addressing some of those areas at various levels. So I'm excited about the work you're doing, and thank you very much to you and the many staff members that are giving up their time and efforts to take on a very serious issue and try to come up with some answers to it.
It's been a great and a very diverse team, elementary, secondary group, very good conversations.
Thank you very much. That concludes our informational items. No discussion items this evening. Other business recommendations for future committee meetings. Any board members have anything to give to Jody, myself? Joe, Mr. Como.
This is more of a question. Did I see that our next meeting is September?
September 3rd.
Okay, I just, I didn't believe my eyes there for a second. I thought that was a misprint, but thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm not opposing.
Okay. You okay with that? Anything else from other board members? And I just want to say in closing, I want to congratulate all of our high school graduates in the next few days. And also a special thank you to all of our students, our staff, our parents, our community, our board members that are here tonight. We have a lot of amazing people in this district that offer a lot of positive contributions on a daily basis, many of which go unnoticed. And rest assured, the Board of Education does appreciate that, as well as I'm sure the community and the district. So thank you very much. We have members here from our administrative staff and central office staff that are here every single meeting. And that time and effort often goes unnoticed. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate it, and I'm sure the other board members here do as well. So thank you very much for everything and for another good school year. Thank you. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.